Rain lashed against the tall windows of the Westbrook estate, a glass and stone mansion nestled deep in the leafy wealth of Greenwich, Connecticut. Thunder rumbled low like a beast clearing its throat, and in one of the many upstairs bedrooms, two small voices trembled in unison. "Daddy, we can't breathe." Ava and Lily huddled beneath their plush blankets, their identical faces pale, wide-eyed, barely able to speak through their shallow breaths. The air in the room felt too tight, like the walls were slowly closing in. A storm outside, but the storm inside their chests was worse. Panic wrapped its cold hands around their throats. Carla, the nanny, burst in without knocking. Her eyes darted to the girls. "Ava, Lily, what's going on?" She rushed over, kneeling between their beds. "We can't," Ava gasped. Carla reached for her phone, heart racing. "Breathe with me. In, out. Good, baby. In, out." Her fingers trembled as she dialed. Across town, in the velvet hush of an exclusive fundraising gala, Daniel Westbrook raised a glass of scotch and delivered a rehearsed smile to the mayor. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers and couture gowns. Every face around him looked painted on, hollow behind the laughter and small talk. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Finally, he glanced down. Carla, 3 missed calls. Daniel's jaw tightened. He stepped away, walking fast through the marble corridor and out to the valet line. He answered the 4th call. "Daniel," Carla's voice was shaky. "It's the girls. They're having trouble breathing, panic or something. I'm calling 911. The valet brought his car before she finished. "I'm on my way." He hung up before she could speak again. His Bentley sliced through the rain like a scalpel, but all Daniel could think of were the words, "We can't breathe. Not they, but we, together." 2 little hearts beating in fear at the same time. He wasn't there. Again. 1,000 thoughts collided in his mind, but guilt pushed through louder than any. They were fine at dinner. Carla said they laughed at the storybook. What happened between then and now? 15 minutes later, he rushed through the grand front doors, rain soaking his suit, and took the stairs 2 at a time. "Where are they?" he shouted. Carla pointed. "In their room. Paramedics just left. They're okay, but, Daniel, they were terrified." He stepped inside. The girls were lying down, tucked under soft blankets, cheeks still flushed. Their small chests rose and fell too quickly. Daniel approached slowly, unsure. Ava looked up at him. "Daddy?" "I'm here," he said, voice cracking. "I'm right here." He sat beside Lily, brushing a damp curl from her forehead. "You're safe." Lily looked straight at him. "You were yelling," she whispered. Daniel froze. "What? You were yelling," she said again, eyes distant, "even when you weren't here." Something in his chest cracked open. He turned to Carla. "They were asleep, then woke up crying," she said. "Said the house was loud, and they couldn't breathe." The storm outside had begun to calm, but inside Daniel, something had only just begun to stir. This wasn't about the thunder. His phone buzzed again. Emails, deadlines, deals. He put it on silent and slid it face down on the nightstand. "Daddy?" Ava asked. "Will you stay?" He nodded. The room was dim, filled with soft breathing and the fading scent of fear. Daniel sat still, as if moving might undo the fragile moment of trust. His arms rested across both their beds, each hand wrapped tightly in a tiny one. He didn't say a word, but something unspoken passed between them. Maybe regret, maybe promise, and for the first time in years, Daniel Westbrook stayed exactly where he was needed. Daniel hadn't slept. He spent the night in the velvet armchair between his daughters' beds, motionless, listening to their breathing. Every sigh, every shift under the blankets kept his nerves taut. He stared at the shadows on the wall, thoughts unraveling. By morning, the girls were calm again, giggling quietly as Carla brought them breakfast. But Daniel sat frozen, as if leaving that room would return everything to the way it was. When Carla glanced at him, her expression said more than words. She was relieved he'd stayed, but also surprised. He showered and dressed in silence, tying the knot of his charcoal tie twice before getting it right. Downstairs, his assistant was already waiting, holding a tablet and a latte. You're due at the Hudson site at 9, then a call with the Chicago investors at 10:30. Cancel it, Daniel said, not looking up. Sir? I said cancel it all. He stepped into his office, the only room in the house that felt like his. Mahogany, leather, chrome, everything polished, everything expensive. Yet for the first time, it all felt absurd. On the shelf behind his desk sat a framed photo. Daniel, Ava, and Lily at a park last year, at a key. The girls were smiling wide, but he wasn't even looking at the camera. His phone had clearly still been in his hand. He rubbed his face and leaned back in his chair. Somewhere between the conference calls, quarterly reports, and endless board meetings, he'd convinced himself that providing was parenting, that success could substitute presence. But where had that idea come from? Memory pulled him sharply backward. Detroit, 1987. A two-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop. The sound of his father's boots on the stairs, heavy, impatient. His mother always tried to soften the evening with warm food and quiet voices, but nothing ever made his father gentle. Daniel remembered learning how to read from cereal boxes, sitting at the kitchen table alone, while his father watched the news with the volume too loud. His father never yelled much, but his silence could freeze the air. That house was filled with the kind of tension that made your stomach hurt. He had promised himself at 16 that he would be different. He would never make his kids feel small. He would never raise his voice. He would build something better, bigger. And he did. A billion-dollar real estate empire, 3 private jets, a house with 12 bathrooms, staff, security, stability. But happiness, that was still missing. A soft knock interrupted the flood of memory. Come in. Carla peeked her head in. Sorry to bother, but Lily's asking if you can come see her drawing. She says she made you something. Daniel stood immediately. In Lily's room, the 7-year-old beamed up at him, holding out a crayon picture. It was messy and bright. Stick figures, 1 tall man, 2 little girls, a big yellow sun overhead, written in purple across the top, me, Ava, Daddy, outside. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He knelt beside her. I love it, he said. This is the best drawing I've ever seen, Lily giggled. It's us, but happy. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. She didn't mean to hurt him with those words, but they cut deeper than anything he'd heard in years. Later that afternoon, Daniel sat in the kitchen with Carla while the girls played on the porch. Carla, he said, have they always had attacks like that? She hesitated. They've had a few episodes this year, nightmares, anxiety. I didn't want to worry you. Daniel exhaled sharply. No, I should have known. It's not your job to fix everything. She nodded, but her eyes didn't soften. They just miss you, Daniel. That's all it is. They want their dad. Outside, the girls laughed as they chased each other barefoot on the wet grass. That sound, real and alive, echoed through the glass. Daniel watched them, jaw tight, heart aching. He had everything he ever thought he wanted, so why did it feel like he was the one gasping for air now? 2 nights later, it happened again. The house was silent. The storm had passed. Everything outside lay still under a blanket of midnight. Daniel, for once, had turned off his phone before bed. He wasn't reading market reports or scanning headlines. He was trying to sleep. Just sleep. Then a scream pierced the stillness. Ava! Carla's voice rang out, sharp with urgency. Daniel bolted upright. He didn't hesitate. He ran barefoot down the hallway, his chest thundering as hard as the panic building in his throat. Ava was on the floor, curled up tightly, her hands clutching her chest. Carla was beside her, murmuring calmly, trying to slow her breathing. Lily stood frozen at the doorway, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Daniel knelt. Ava, baby, it's okay. Daddy's here. Her eyes flitted to him, wild with fear. It hurts. I can't. Her voice broke off. Carla looked up, tense. We need help. I'm calling an ambulance, Daniel said, already pulling his phone. At the hospital, under the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, the twins sat wrapped in soft blue blankets, while a pediatric doctor spoke with Daniel and Carla in low tones. Panic-induced hyperventilation, the doctor explained. No underlying asthma or cardiac concerns. It's psychological, emotional stress. Kids this age feel things deeply, especially when they don't understand them. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. So what do we do? You need to address the root cause, the doctor replied. Consistent support, therapy, connection. Daniel glanced through the glass at Ava, who was drawing on a whiteboard with Lily beside her. They looked so small. Later in the car, silence stretched uncomfortably between him and Carla. The girls had fallen asleep in the back. Daniel finally asked, "What if I'm the cause?" Carla didn't answer right away. Then she spoke softly. "They don't want you to be perfect. They just want you to see them." He swallowed hard. "I don't know how. I thought I was doing everything right." "You're doing everything alone," she said. "That's different." Daniel stared ahead as the headlights swept the road. The ache in his chest deepened. He remembered Lily's words again. "You were yelling, even when you weren't here." How could silence sound like shouting? Back at the house, Daniel carried Ava to her bed. Her hand clung to his shirt, even in sleep. He tucked Lily in next, brushing a kiss across her forehead. When he returned to his office, he didn't sit at his desk. He stood in the center of the room, looking around at the plaques, awards, and architectural models. His life's work, his empire. None of it would be there to hold his daughters when they cried at night. His laptop dinged. New emails. One subject line flashed bright. Urgent. Hong Kong contract dispute needs immediate review. He didn't open it. Instead, he sat on the rug, back against the bookshelf, head in his hands. How had he gotten here? How had he let it get this far, without seeing the signs? His father's voice echoed in his memory, distant but sharp. "Crying never fixes anything. Get up." Daniel had gotten up. Over and over, until success drowned out feeling. But his daughters weren't crying for success. They were crying for him. In the hallway, he heard small footsteps. Lily appeared, holding her blanket like armor. "I had a bad dream." He stood quickly and opened his arms. "Come here." She climbed into his arms without hesitation, her head against his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. "Stay," she whispered. He didn't hesitate. "All night." And for once, Daniel Westbrook didn't look at his watch. He didn't check his phone. He didn't think about deadlines or deals. He just stood there, in the quiet dark, holding the one thing he had almost let slip away. The next morning came with a pale grey sky and the scent of early fall creeping into the air. Yellow leaves scattered across the Westbrook estate's long driveway, but Daniel barely noticed. He was in the kitchen, staring into his untouched coffee. Carla entered quietly. "They're still sleeping," she said. "I let them stay home today." Daniel nodded. "Good." She hesitated, watching him. "You didn't sleep, did you?" He shook his head slowly. "I keep thinking, and how long have they been carrying this without me seeing it?" Carla poured herself tea. "A while, but they never blamed you. They just miss you." Daniel leaned against the counter. "That's the part that breaks me. They still want me, even after everything I've ignored." Upstairs, the sound of little footsteps and laughter began. Daniel looked up, then smiled faintly. "It's a good sound." "It is," Carla agreed, "but they laugh louder when they know you're listening." Later that day, Daniel took a call from his executive assistant, Julia, as he walked the long hallway to his office. "We've got a PR issue," she said bluntly. "There's a clip circulating online, audio from last week's board meeting. Someone leaked it." "What clip?" he asked, jaw tightening. "The part where you raised your voice, shouted at the CFO, told him to get his act together or step down. It's trending under Westbrook Unhinged." Daniel stopped walking. "Are you serious?" "It's already been picked up by a few business blogs. Your investors are asking questions." He ended the call and stepped into his office, shutting the door behind him. The glass walls that once symbolized power now felt fragile, like everything was see-through, like anyone could look in and see the cracks. He sat at his desk, pulled up the video. There it was, his voice, cold and biting, echoing through the boardroom like a hammer. "You're either part of the solution or you're out of this company. I don't pay people to be indecisive." Watching it made him wince. But worse than the tone was the timing. It sounded just like the yelling Lily described in her nightmares. His daughters had never sat in a boardroom, but they didn't have to. His energy carried through him, through the walls, through the spaces he left empty at home. He didn't have to raise his voice in their bedroom for them to feel it. He brought it back with him every time he walked through the front door, still wearing the war of the day on his face. There was a knock at the door. This time it wasn't Carla. It was Ava. "Hey, Daddy?" He turned. "Hey, sweetheart. Come in." She walked up to his desk, holding a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "I made you this." He opened it carefully. Inside was a clay figure, lopsided and rough, but clearly a man holding two small girls by the hands. "It's us," she said, beaming. Daniel blinked hard. "It's beautiful," she smiled. "You can put it on your desk so you don't forget." He nodded. "I'll never forget." After she left, Daniel stared at the tiny sculpture. His hands had shaped skyscrapers, shopping centers, luxury condos across 5 states. But nothing he had ever built mattered like this. He picked up his phone, then paused. For once, instead of calling his attorney or PR rep, he called his brother, James, whom he hadn't spoken to in 6 months. "Dan?" James answered, surprised. "Hey," Daniel said quietly. "Can we talk?" There was silence, then a simple response. "Yeah, I'd like that." For the first time in years, Daniel chose connection over control. The empire could wait. Downstairs, the girls were laughing again, this time louder. He could hear the difference. They knew he was listening. Dr. E. Elaine Morse had seen it all. Children who shut down, children who screamed, children who masked their pain in smiles so wide it broke your heart. But when she met Ava and Lily Westbrook, it wasn't the fear in their eyes that struck her. It was the way they held each other's hands so tightly, like life jackets. Daniel sat across from her in a tailored suit that looked more like armor than clothing. His jaw was tight, his hands folded too perfectly. He looked like a man used to winning negotiations, not discussing feelings. "I want to do what's best for them," he said. "Tell me what that is." Dr. Morse leaned back. "It starts with being honest, with yourself first." She glanced at the girls through the glass partition where they were coloring quietly in the playroom. Ava was drawing a house. Lily was drawing a storm. "You can join us in a minute," she said, "but let them lead the pace. Don't force connection, just be present." Daniel nodded, though every part of him screamed for a plan, a timeline, an objective. But feelings didn't work like contracts. In their first session, Dr. Morse kept it simple. "Do you ever feel scared at home?" she asked. Ava shrugged. "Only when Daddy's mad." Daniel flinched. Lily added, "Even when he's not saying anything, he feels mad." Dr. Morse nodded gently. Feelings can be loud even in silence. The sessions continued over the following weeks. Play therapy, art therapy, storytelling. Ava talked more. Lily stayed quiet but always watched closely. Through their drawings, Elaine saw a pattern. Rain, closed doors, big eyes watching from corners. She brought Daniel in again, alone this time. "Your daughters aren't afraid of you, Daniel," she said. "They're afraid of losing you. They're afraid of the pressure they feel when you're around. They don't know how to be themselves under your shadow." He looked at the floor. "I never meant to make them feel that way." "I know," she said, "but meaning well isn't enough. You're a powerful man. Your presence has weight. You need to learn how to make that weight feel safe." Daniel clenched his fists. "How do I undo years of mistakes?" "You don't," she replied. "You show them you're willing to try again and again. You learn to sit in their world instead of asking them to survive in yours." The next day, Daniel arrived early. He sat with Lily on the floor, letting her place stickers on his briefcase. Ava read him a story she'd written about a fox who learned how to stop being scary. He didn't interrupt, he didn't correct her spelling, he just listened. Later, as he walked out, Dr. Morse joined him. "So you're learning," she said. "Not fast, but genuinely." "I've built my whole life around certainty," he said. "Now I wake up not knowing how to be the father they need." "That's the beginning," she said with a faint smile. "Real parenting starts in uncertainty." Back at home, Daniel found Carla in the kitchen. She was making grilled cheese, humming an old jazz tune under her breath. How long have you been their safe place? He asked quietly. Carla looked up, surprised. Since the beginning, I guess. He nodded. Thank you for filling in all the places I didn't even know I left empty. Carla wiped her hands. They don't need perfect. They just need real. They're smart, Daniel. They'll see the difference. Upstairs, the girls had built a blanket fort. Lily popped her head out. Daddy, come see. He crawled inside, careful not to knock anything over. Want to play family? Ava asked. Daniel smiled. I'd like that. And for the first time, it wasn't a role he had to perform. It was a place he was finally learning to belong. Daniel sat at the head of the long conference table, but for the first time in years he didn't feel in control. The room buzzed with tension. Screens lit up with quarterly losses. Charts dipped lower than anyone wanted to admit. Across from him sat Jacob Hill, polished, poised, and hungry. Jacob had once been Daniel's protégé. Now he was the loudest voice in the room, his tone just respectful enough to mask ambition. Our numbers in the Western Corridor are hemorrhaging, Jacob said. If we don't realign strategy, we're dead in the water. Daniel glanced at the data, jaw tightening. I built that corridor from nothing. And now it's falling apart, Jacob said. Emotion doesn't save numbers. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Daniel leaned back, eyes scanning the room. These were the people who once followed him without question. Now they looked at him like a relic. Brilliant, yes, but disconnected. Julia, his assistant, stepped in quietly and handed him a folder. Tomorrow morning's calendar. He flipped through it. Back-to-back meetings, investor calls, an emergency summit in Chicago. Then his eyes paused on one line, Lily's recital, 10:30 a.m. He closed the folder and stared out the window. Rain again. It always seemed to be raining lately. After the meeting, Jacob caught up to him in the hallway. You're distracted, Jacob said. You used to never miss a beat. I have 2 daughters who need me, Daniel replied flatly. Jacob raised a brow. You think the market cares? Daniel didn't answer. Later that evening, at home, he sat with Ava while she practiced her spelling. Lily was drawing in her notebook nearby, legs swinging off the couch. Are you coming tomorrow? She asked, barely looking up. Daniel hesitated. To your recital? Lily nodded, still coloring. He looked at the folder again. The Chicago summit was make or break, but Lily's voice was soft when she asked, as if she expected the answer to be no. I'll be there, he said. Lily looked up. Promise. He took her hand. Promise. Carla, watching from the kitchen, didn't say anything, but her eyes held something close to hope. That night, Daniel lay awake, phone in hand. Emails buzzed in. Jacob's voice echoed in his head. Emotion doesn't save numbers. He got up and walked into his office, stared at the blueprint of the Chicago deal. It could shift everything. If he wasn't there to guide it, Jacob would take the reins and maybe never give them back. But then he thought of Lily, of her hands shaking, of her voice when she said you were yelling, even when you weren't here. He reached for his phone, typed a message to Julia. Cancel Chicago, reschedule everything. I'm not leaving tomorrow. He hit send before he could second-guess it. The next morning he wore a simple button-down. No tie, no watch, just a paper flower pinned to his chest, handmade by Lily, with glue still drying on the edges. They drove in silence. Lily grinned the whole way. At the school, the small auditorium buzzed with the noise of parents and camera phones. Daniel sat in the front row, both hands resting on his knees. When Lily stepped on stage, her eyes scanned the crowd, then found him. She smiled, not a small smile, a full, glowing, unmistakable smile that made Daniel's throat tighten. She sang softly, sweetly, no trembling, no panic. When it ended, the applause was thunderous. Daniel stood first. As they walked back to the car, Lily held his hand tightly. You were really there, she said. I was, he replied. And I will be. His phone buzzed again. Jacob. Daniel let it ring. Some moments were worth more than any deal. The air in the school auditorium carried the soft hum of nervous energy. Children dressed in pastel costumes fidgeted behind the curtain. Parents whispered excitedly from folding chairs. and the scent of old wood and construction paper lingered like a memory. Daniel sat still in the front row, shoulders square, legs crossed, Lily's paper flower pinned neatly to his chest. It crinkled slightly when he breathed, but he didn't touch it. He wanted it there. His phone was off. Not silenced. Off. A conscious decision. Next to him, Carla held Ava's hand. The little girl beamed, proud and excited, her gaze darting between the curtain and her father's face. Then the lights dimmed. Lily stepped out onto the stage in a pale yellow dress, her hair braided down the side. She looked smaller than he remembered, but when she opened her mouth to sing, her voice, though gentle, filled the space. There was no tremble, no glance toward the wings. She stood tall, and when her eyes found his, she smiled and kept singing. Daniel couldn't move. Every note was like a thread stitching something back together inside him. It wasn't a perfect performance. She missed a line, hesitated once. But she finished, and when she did, the applause felt thunderous. He stood with the others, clapping, smiling, but silent with emotion. After the show, in the hallway, thick with laughter and camera flashes, Lily ran to him, arms open. He caught her mid-air. "I saw you," she said. "I saw you too," he whispered. "You stayed the whole time. I always will." Behind them, Carla and Ava watched, quiet, smiling. For the first time in months, Lily looked lighter, as if something invisible had been lifted. Later that day, back at the house, Daniel stepped into his office. His assistant had forwarded dozens of missed calls and emails. His absence from the Chicago summit had caused panic, but he didn't care, not really. He sat down, pulled out a legal pad, and began to write. Not emails, not deals, just thoughts, feelings. By mid-afternoon, Julia called again. This time he answered. "You're on every major financial feed," she said flatly. "They're calling it reckless." Jacob is positioning himself as the new voice of leadership. Daniel looked out the window. The backyard was scattered with toys and leaves, sunlight pouring through the oaks. "Let him talk," he said. "You're risking your reputation." "No," he said. "I'm rebuilding it." A pause. Then Julia asked more gently, "Was it worth it?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Later that evening, Lily came into his office, dragging a blanket behind her like a cape. "Can I stay with you while you work?" He smiled. "I'm not working, just thinking." She climbed onto the couch and rested her head on the armrest. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything," he said. "I wasn't scared today." Daniel nodded, voice thick. "I know." She looked at him, eyes serious. "Because you were there. I didn't have to worry about anything else." He crossed the room and sat beside her. "I'm sorry it took me this long to figure it out," he said. She reached for his hand. "You figured it out now. That's what matters." The sun slipped below the trees. The room glowed golden for a moment, then softened into quiet. Daniel stayed there with her until she fell asleep. When Carla came to carry her to bed, she looked at him and said, "You didn't just show up today, you showed them who you're becoming." And for the first time in a long, long while, Daniel believed he could. 3 days after the recital, the backlash hit full force. Business Insider ran the headline first. Daniel Westbrook misses critical summit, sparks investor doubts. Within hours, Bloomberg added fuel. Leadership in crisis, Westbrook's absence raises eyebrows. The phone in Daniel's office didn't stop ringing. Emails flooded in from board members, shareholders, old colleagues, suddenly full of concern. Julia's voice on speaker was sharp, her words clipped. "They're calling it irresponsible. Jacob's spinning the narrative that you've lost focus." Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching the rain streak down the glass wall behind her face on the screen. "And have I?" he asked quietly. She paused. "No, you're changing." "They don't know what to do with that. Neither do I sometimes." Later that morning, he was reading through a report when Carla walked in holding a piece of paper. She looked nervous. "You need to see this." It was a letter, written in purple marker, lines uneven but legible. To the people who are mad at my daddy, he didn't come to your meeting because he came to mine. I used to be scared every day. I thought if I sang I'd mess up and he wouldn't be proud. But he came, he clapped, and I wasn't scared anymore. I think that's more important than talking about buildings. From Lily, age 7. Daniel read it twice. His throat tightened. Where did she send this? Carla smiled. To the local paper. They published it online this morning. He opened his laptop and searched. There it was, on the homepage of the Greenwich Post, under the title, A Child's Letter to a Corporate Giant. It had already been shared over 12,000 times. He read the comments. Dozens of parents praising Lily's bravery, CEOs quietly admitting they'd missed too many recitals themselves. Even critics softened, saying maybe Daniel was figuring something out the hard way. Later that afternoon, Ava came into his office holding a tablet. People are talking about Lily's letter. I know, Daniel said. She's very brave. Ava hesitated. Do you think they'll be mad at her? He knelt down to her level. No one's mad at her. And if they are, they can deal with me. Ava smiled, hugged him, then ran off to tell Lily. By evening, national news picked up the story. Westbrook's redemption was the teaser on a CNN segment. A panel of talking heads debated if emotional leadership was weakness or progress. But none of it mattered as much as the look on Lily's face when she saw her letter on the screen. That's me, she yelled, pointing. You changed something today, Daniel said. Lily climbed onto the couch beside him. I just told the truth. Truth had always scared Daniel more than numbers. It was unpredictable. It didn't bend to pressure. But now he saw it held a different kind of power. That night Julia called again, her tone different this time. You're trending, she said. But for the right reasons. Some of our partners actually want to meet, talk family-friendly campaigns. Public image is shifting. I didn't plan any of this, Daniel said. Exactly, she replied. That's why it worked. After hanging up, Daniel went outside. The storm had passed. The air was still, the sky clear. He walked barefoot across the grass, feeling it cool between his toes. Carla joined him quietly. She changed everything with a letter, Daniel said. She just said what needed to be said, Carla replied. Daniel looked back at the house, its windows glowing with warmth. It used to feel like a fortress, he said. Now it feels like a home. And as the evening settled in and laughter drifted down from the upstairs rooms, Daniel understood something deeper than any boardroom lesson. Legacy wasn't built in concrete and glass. It was built right here, with tiny voices brave enough to speak when no one else would. Doctor. Elaine Morse sat across from Daniel in the quiet of her office, a steaming mug of tea untouched on the table between them. Outside, the afternoon light stretched long across the floor, warm and soft. But inside, Daniel felt the familiar tightness pressing behind his ribs. You've done well showing up for your daughters, she said, but this fear, this knot inside you, it's not just about them. Not entirely. Daniel stared at his hands. You sound like you already know where this is going. I don't, she replied gently. But you do. You just haven't said it out loud. He exhaled slowly. My father was a man who believed silence was strength. Emotion was weakness. I can't remember a single time he hugged me without it feeling like a performance. If I cried, he left the room. If I failed, he didn't speak to me. Elaine waited. I told myself I'd never be him, Daniel continued. I swore it, but then I woke up one day, and there I was, distant, cold, absent, just in a better suit. There was a pause. Tell me about a memory that stays with you, Elaine asked. Daniel looked down. I was 10. I had a science project due, but I was sick, fever, chills. I told him I couldn't finish it. He didn't say a word. He walked out, came back 30 minutes later with the supplies, put everything in front of me. He said, "Real men finish what they start." Then he turned on the TV and left me there, shivering, trying to build a volcano out of baking soda. Elaine didn't interrupt. That night I thought if I finished it maybe he'd notice me. Maybe he'd say something kind. I stayed up until midnight. I won second place. Did he say anything? She asked. Daniel shook his head. Just nodded when I showed him the ribbon, then went back to reading the paper. He rubbed his face, then looked up. I built everything I have to prove I wasn't weak, to prove I was worthy of something. But I still feel like that kid trying to earn his approval. Elaine leaned in. And what would that boy say if he could see you now? He let the question hang in the air. I think he'd be proud, he said finally. Not of the buildings, not the deals, but of the way I held my daughter's hand backstage, the way I didn't walk away when she needed me scared. Elaine smiled softly. That's the man your girls see, not the one you fear becoming. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. Later that evening, back home, he found an old box tucked deep in his closet. Inside were scattered remnants of childhood, an old baseball glove, faded report cards, a crumpled photo of his father standing rigid beside a rusted-out truck. He stared at it for a long time. Then he walked downstairs. Ava and Lily were in the living room, building towers from books and cushions. "Girls," he said, holding up the photo, "this is your grandfather." They looked up, curious. "Was he nice?" Ava asked. Daniel paused. He tried. He didn't always know how. But I'm learning so I can do better. Lily took the photo and studied it. "He looks like you, but you smile more." Daniel laughed quietly. "I didn't used to, but you two changed that." Later, when they were asleep, he sat on the porch with Carla. "I think I've spent my whole life trying not to be my father," he said, "but I never took time to become myself." Carla sipped her tea. "And who is that?" He looked out at the stars. Someone still figuring it out, but not afraid to keep trying. The night was calm. For once, the silence around him wasn't heavy. It was full of space. Space for healing, space for change. And for the first time, Daniel didn't feel like he was running from anything. He was finally stepping toward something. The car wound its way through the golden hills of the Berkshires. Windows down, the scent of pine and earth curling into the seats. Daniel drove in silence, not the heavy kind, but the calm kind. Lily and Ava were in the back, heads pressed against the glass, eyes wide with wonder at every bend in the road. "Are there bears here?" Ava asked. "Probably," Lily replied, "but Daddy can fight them." Daniel chuckled. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." They reached the cabin by mid-afternoon, a wooden A-frame tucked between tall trees, weathered and welcoming. No cell service, no laptops, just firewood, the creak of floorboards, and air so crisp it felt like a new beginning. Carla met them at the porch, arms full of groceries. "This place smells like stories." "It smells like pancakes," Lily said, already bouncing toward the kitchen. That first night, they cooked together. Carla chopped vegetables while Ava stirred pancake batter with serious concentration. Lily set the table and folded napkins into triangles. Daniel stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with an exaggerated flourish that made the girls giggle uncontrollably. "I didn't know you could cook," Carla teased. "I didn't know either," he said. After dinner, they sat around the fireplace, flames casting warm shadows on the walls. The girls huddled under a blanket, roasting marshmallows over the fire, while Daniel read aloud from an old adventure book he found on the shelf. "Do the voices," Ava insisted. He did, slipping into a deep pirate growl that made Lily nearly choke on her marshmallow from laughing. For a few hours, there were no meetings, no headlines, no expectations, just the simple joy of being fully present. The next morning, they hiked a trail that led to a small clearing with a view that stretched miles over the valley. The trees burned with autumn color, reds, oranges, yellows, so bright they looked painted. "Wow," Lily whispered. Daniel took a photo, not for social media, but just for them. They sat on the rocks, sharing trail mix and stories. At one point, Ava leaned her head against his arm. "This is the first time I felt like we're a real family," she said. Daniel didn't answer right away. His throat tightened too much for words. Carla caught his eye from across the clearing. She gave a quiet nod, the kind that didn't need to be explained. Back at the cabin that night, it rained softly. The girls built a fort with blankets and chairs. Daniel crawled inside with them, squeezing his tall frame beneath a sagging sheet roof. "Okay," Lily declared. "We're explorers, but you're the one who gets lost." "Again," he laughed. "Why am I always the one who gets lost?" "Because you're the grown-up," Ava said matter-of-factly. He lay on the floor, letting them pile pillows on his chest. "I don't know," he said. "This is my favorite trip I've ever taken." "Even better than the Bahamas?" Lily asked. "Way better." Ava looked at him. "Can we come here every year?" "Every year," he promised. Later, when the girls were asleep and the rain tapped gently on the roof, Daniel stepped outside. Carla was sitting on the porch with a blanket draped over her shoulders. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For holding it all together when I wasn't ready." She looked out into the trees. "They were never waiting for perfection, Daniel. They were just waiting for you." He sat beside her. The air smelled like wet leaves and wood smoke. Everything felt grounded. "Do you think I can be the father they deserve?" he asked. "I think you already are," she said. "You just needed to believe it." The silence that followed was peaceful. Not the end of a story, but the pause before a new chapter. And in that moment, Daniel felt something he hadn't in a long time. Rooted. Back in Greenwich, the office felt different. The glass walls remained, the sleek leather chairs, the long polished conference table, but the energy had shifted. Daniel walked through the building not like a storm, but like someone returning home after a long absence. Not everyone smiled, not everyone trusted the change, but they noticed it. The first move came on a Monday morning. Daniel called an all-hands meeting. No slides, no projections, just him, standing in front of a room full of people who had grown used to fear disguised as leadership. "I've been the kind of boss who thought fear and pressure built results," he said, "but fear builds walls, it doesn't build trust." The room was silent. Some raised brows, a few exchanged glances. "I'm restructuring our work model," he continued. "We'll offer more flexible schedules for parents. Mental health benefits will expand. And I'll be taking a step back from daily operations, starting today." Murmurs rippled through the staff. "I'm not leaving. I'm changing how I lead. I want this company to reflect the values I forgot mattered most." Afterward, Julia approached him, arms crossed. "Are you sure about this?" He nodded. "Completely." She looked him in the eye. "Then I'm with you." Word spread fast. Some investors were skeptical, others intrigued. But when Daniel announced the launch of a foundation focused on supporting children with anxiety and stress disorders, the story gained traction. The Westbrook Family Foundation rolled out within weeks. Its mission: early intervention programs, school partnerships, and family counseling resources. It was a cause Daniel didn't just fund, he lived. And he didn't do it alone. Carla, after some convincing, agreed to be the foundation's first director. She had the heart, the insight, and most importantly, the girls' trust. "I'm no executive," she warned. "You're better," Daniel replied. "You see people." At the ribbon-cutting event, local press filled the room. Ava and Lily stood beside their dad, holding hands, wearing matching blue dresses. Daniel didn't prepare a speech. He simply spoke from the truth. "I thought I had everything," he began, "but I was building walls when I should have been building bridges." He looked at Lily, then Ava. "These two taught me what no MBA ever could, that presence is power and love is leadership." The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was real. After the event, the girls pulled him aside. "Did you mean it?" Ava asked. "All of it," he said. Lily grinned. "Then it's not just a company anymore. It's your heart." That night, he sat on the porch again, the fall breeze brushing softly against his skin. The lights in the house glowed warm. Inside, Carla and the girls were playing a board game, laughter echoing faintly through the open door. He opened a notebook. The same one he had once filled with numbers and market projections. Now he began a new page, things I want my daughters to remember. I showed up when it mattered. I listened, even when it was hard. I changed, even when I was afraid. I loved them out loud. He closed the notebook. A small hand touched his shoulder. "Lily." Are you writing a story? Yes, he said. Ours. She curled beside him, head on his arm. Can I be in it forever? He kissed the top of her head. You already are. And for the first time in his life, Daniel felt like the foundation he was building wasn't just for the world to see, but for the people who mattered most to come home to. It started with tightness in his chest. Daniel had just returned from a school assembly, Ava and Lily clinging to each arm, full of stories and stickers. He'd laughed harder that morning than he had in years, but now, standing in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water, something shifted. A pressure, not sharp, but deep, heavy. He brushed it off, probably stress, maybe something he ate. He took a breath, then another, but it didn't fade. Later, Carla found him sitting on the stairs, his forehead resting against the banister, eyes closed, sweat beading along his temple. Daniel? He looked up. I just, need a minute. You don't look right. I'm fine. You're not. He tried to stand, but the world tilted sideways. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the tile. Carla was already dialing 911. At the hospital, monitors beeped steadily beside his bed. White sheets, the smell of antiseptic, the hum of hushed conversations just beyond the curtain. It was a mild heart attack, the doctor explained. No permanent damage, but a serious warning. Your body's been asking for a break you didn't give it. Daniel nodded, exhausted. How long do I have to stay? Couple days. Rest. Observation. And after that, you slow down. Carla arrived with the girls hours later. They stood in the doorway, hesitant. You look like a robot, Lily whispered. I feel like one. Daniel smiled weakly. Ava climbed into the chair beside him. Are you going to die? No, he said gently. I scared myself, but I'm okay now. Lily reached for his hand. You don't have to fix everything, you know. Her words echoed inside him. You don't have to fix everything. I'm not used to needing help, he said. Carla stepped closer. Maybe it's time you let people in. The girls brought him handmade cards, crayon flowers, crooked hearts. One simply said, Stay. Daniel kept them on the table beside his bed, reading them over and over when the room grew quiet. That night, as the lights dimmed and the nurses changed shifts, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. Everything had changed so fast. He had come so far. And yet his body had given him a warning he couldn't ignore. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't untouchable. But he wasn't alone either. The next morning, Dr. Morse visited. She pulled a chair to his bedside. You've built something beautiful lately, but now you face the harder lesson. He looked at her. Which is? To keep building, you need to learn to receive, not just give. He sighed. That's not easy. I didn't say it was. But your daughters already know how. Later that day, Daniel was released with a strict regimen, diet, medication, rest, and above all, slowing down. Back at home, the girls decorated his room like a fortress, blankets, pillows, paper crowns. They took turns reading to him. Carla prepared his meals, and for once he let them. He let himself be taken care of. One afternoon, as the sunlight spilled across the living room, Daniel sat with Lily in silence. She was coloring. He was sipping tea slowly. Do you think you'll get sick again? She asked. I hope not, he said honestly. But I'm going to do everything I can to stay healthy. Lily nodded. Good. 'Cause you're our favorite person, he smiled. You're mine too. Ava appeared at the door. Movie night. Daniel looked at Carla, then back at the girls. Let's make it the coziest one yet. And as they curled up on the couch together, surrounded by popcorn and mismatched socks and laughter, Daniel realized something vital. Slowing down wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. And love wasn't about doing, it was about staying. The ballroom was packed, suits, dresses, camera flashes. The annual Mental Health Awareness Gala had always drawn headlines, but this year, one name carried unexpected weight: Daniel Westbrook. He stood near the back, adjusting the cuffs of a simple navy suit. no designer logo, no polished speech in hand. He wasn't here as the billionaire CEO or the headline subject of a public redemption arc. He was here as a father who had almost lost everything. Carla found him before the ceremony began. "You ready?" "No," he admitted, "but I'm here." "That's enough," she smiled. When his name was called, the room hushed. He walked onto the stage slowly, one step at a time. No teleprompter, just a microphone, and a heart that had been rebuilt from the inside out. He looked across the sea of faces, executives, advocates, parents, survivors. "I used to think vulnerability was a liability," he began. "That success meant never slowing down, never needing help, never letting anyone see you break." He paused, the weight of silence anchoring his voice. "But then one night, I heard my daughters cry out in fear, saying they couldn't breathe, and I realized I wasn't the strong one. I was the one making it harder for them to breathe." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some leaned in. Others looked down, affected in ways they didn't expect. "I missed moments. I built walls. I led with fear instead of love, until my body forced me to stop. Until my children taught me how to start over." He glanced to the side of the stage, where Ava and Lily sat in tiny velvet chairs, legs swinging. They smiled back at him, steady and sure. "So I'm not here to offer strategies or solutions. I'm here to say one thing: it's never too late to be who they need you to be. Not the perfect version, just the present one." Applause came slow at first. Then stronger, real. Not out of admiration, but recognition. After the event, people approached in waves. "My son has panic attacks too. I haven't been to my daughter's soccer game in 3 years. I needed this. I didn't know CEOs could cry." Daniel smiled at them all. "Neither did I." The next day, the media picked it up, but this time the headlines weren't biting. They were reverent. "Westbrook redefines leadership with heart. From boardroom to playroom, the rise of a new kind of CEO." But Daniel didn't chase the attention. He returned home, poured cereal for the girls, walked Ava to school, listened to Lily talk about planets for 20 straight minutes without interruption. He became a speaker, not for fame, but to share what he'd learned the hard way. He joined panels on work-life balance, consulted with schools about childhood anxiety, donated silently to families who couldn't afford therapy. He spent more time in parks than airports. He missed fewer dinners. He apologized more. One afternoon, Carla sat beside him on a bench near the school playground. "You're not the same man who walked into my kitchen 6 months ago," she said. "I know," he replied. "That version of me had all the answers. This one asks better questions." She nodded, watching the girls climb the jungle gym. "They trust you now, not just because you show up, but because you stay soft." He looked at his hands, once known for contracts and pressure, now known for holding small ones gently. "What do you think they'll remember?" he asked. "That you chose them." Over and over, the wind picked up slightly, carrying laughter across the grass. Daniel leaned back, closed his eyes for a moment. He no longer needed applause or power to feel whole. He had 2 daughters who ran into his arms without hesitation, and that was more than enough. The house was quiet, but not in the way it used to be. It wasn't hollow silence anymore, the kind that echoed loneliness through glass and marble. Now it was filled with softer sounds, the turning of pages, the hum of laughter drifting faintly down hallways, the rhythm of a home alive again. Daniel sat on the edge of Ava's bed, a book in his hands. The lamp on the nightstand glowed warm, casting light across her sleepy face. Lily was curled up under the blanket beside her sister, eyes heavy, but refusing to close until the story was done. "Just one more page," Ava whispered. He smiled. "You said that 3 pages ago." "Please," Lily added, her voice muffled through the blanket. He shook his head, pretending to protest, then read aloud, his voice steady and gentle. The fox in the story found its way home, no longer afraid of the forest. When he reached the last line, both girls sighed in unison. "Again tomorrow?" Ava asked. "Every night," he said. As he set the book down, Lily reached out her hand. Don't go yet. Daniel took her hand, then Ava's, resting one in each of his, their small fingers curled around his like anchors. For years he had measured his worth in skyscrapers and signatures. Now he measured it in the quiet way two children held onto him. You know, Ava murmured, her eyes half shut, I don't get scared at night anymore. Lily nodded. Me neither. Daniel felt his chest tighten, not with fear but with gratitude. Why's that? Because you stay, Ava whispered. Simple words, but they carried more weight than any applause he'd ever earned. He kissed their foreheads, then sat still as their breathing slowed into the rhythm of sleep. Downstairs, Carla was tidying the kitchen when Daniel joined her. She looked up, reading his expression instantly. They fell asleep holding you again, she said softly. They don't cry anymore, he replied. Not like before. Carla nodded. They don't need to. They know you're listening. He leaned against the counter, exhaling. Sometimes I wonder how many years I lost, chasing the wrong things. You didn't lose them, Carla said. You found your way back. That matters more. Later that night, Daniel stepped onto the back porch. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth. The trees swayed gently, and for the first time in decades he didn't feel the urge to check his phone or fill the silence with work. The stillness was enough. He thought of his father, the stern eyes, the cold silences, the weight of expectation. He thought of himself, once on the same path, repeating patterns without realizing. And he thought of the night everything changed, the sound of two little voices sobbing, "We can't breathe." That moment had cracked something open inside him. Painful, yes, but necessary, because it made room for something new to grow. The door creaked softly behind him. Ava padded out, dragging her blanket, hair tousled from sleep. "Daddy," she whispered, "I dreamed about the cabin." "Can we go again?" He bent down, wrapping her in his arms. "Of course we can, as many times as you want." She smiled, then yawned. "It felt like home." "It is," he said. "Wherever we are together, that's home." He carried her back upstairs, tucking her in beside Lily once more. Standing there, watching them sleep, Daniel realized something profound. He had spent years trying to build a legacy out of glass and steel, but true legacy wasn't something you could see from a skyline. It was the memory of a father who stayed when it mattered most, the comfort of small hands that no longer trembled at night. The quiet peace of knowing love had replaced fear, and as the house settled into silence again, Daniel Westbrook finally felt whole. The morning light streamed softly through the tall windows, painting golden lines across the hardwood floor. Daniel stood in the kitchen, pouring orange juice into 3 glasses. Ava and Lily shuffled in, still in pajamas, their hair messy from sleep. They yawned in unison, then smiled when they saw him already waiting. "You're up early," Ava said, surprised. "I wanted to make breakfast," he replied. "Pancakes again?" Lily giggled. "You're getting good at those." They sat at the table, the sound of forks and laughter filling the room. It wasn't a special occasion. No gala, no spotlight, just breakfast on a regular Tuesday. And yet for Daniel it felt like everything. After the plates were cleared, he walked into his office. On the shelf sat Lily's clay sculpture, the uneven figure of a tall man holding 2 little girls by the hands. Next to it was the purple-lettered note she had written months ago, the one that had shifted everything. He picked it up, reading the words once more. "He came to my recital. He clapped. I wasn't scared anymore." Daniel closed his eyes. The memory of that night, their cries echoing through the mansion, "We can't breathe," washed over him. It had once felt like the sound of failure. Now it felt like the moment of rescue, the cry that had forced him to stop running from himself, the cry that saved them all. Carla entered quietly, carrying a folder. "Press requests." "They still want you to speak at more conferences." He set the letter down. "I'll do some, but not all." She studied him. "You're not afraid of saying no anymore." He smiled. "I'm not afraid of slowing down either." Later that evening, Daniel and the girls sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets as the sun melted into the horizon. The air smelled of fresh grass and wood smoke from a nearby chimney. Ava leaned against him, holding a book. Lily lay across his lap, humming to herself. "Daddy?" Ava asked. "Yeah? Do you think you'll ever go back to being too busy?" He shook his head. "Not if I can help it." Lily tilted her head up. "Promise?" "Promise." They stayed there until the stars blinked awake in the sky. The girls eventually drifted off, their breathing soft and even. Daniel held them close, listening. No panic, no fear, just peace. He thought about the legacy he was leaving. Not a company, not skyscrapers, but moments like this. A father who learned too late for perfection, but just in time for presence. A man who rebuilt himself piece by piece with the help of two little girls who never stopped believing in him. He whispered into the night, more to himself than to them, "You can breathe now, and so can I." For the first time, the words weren't desperate, they were true. Daniel Westbrook's story wasn't about wealth or power or even redemption in the eyes of the world. It was about the quiet victories no one sees, showing up for bedtime stories, choosing family over boardrooms, holding tiny hands through storms until the fear finally faded. It was about second chances and the courage to take them. And if his journey showed anything, it was this: success without love is empty, but love, steady, imperfect, present, can fill a life to overflowing. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of second chances and the strength found in presence, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us what truly matters. And if you want to keep going on this journey, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. A story about another father who risked everything to reconnect with his son. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't about empires built, but about hearts rebuilt.